And we're going to look at chapter 7 to 8. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to chapter 6, though, just kind of give us a recap how we got to where we're at. But we're going to be mainly kind of focused on chapters 7 to 8. And if I want to leave us with the idea as I kind of go through the main idea or the main thought I want to bring out of this section of scriptures, I want to come up with the idea of starting what you finish, right? And the scripture I want to bring into mind is Matthew chapter 23, where he says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. And what you'll find as we look through the scripture is that Gideon kind of was at both ends of the spectrum. He started humble, but you'll see by the end of his life, he kind of was arrogant and kind of exalted himself. So he really embodied both aspects of the scripture. He humbled himself, but then he exalted himself. And you'll see both ends and extremes. And again, if nothing else we learned is that it's good to start good, but it's even better to finish what you started. So just to kind of backtrack where we're at, we're in chapter 6. The Midianites, they're the oppressors. They've kind of been brought into this situation essentially as a chastising rod. The Israelites have kind of gotten out of order, and God is now using the Midianites to essentially be his rod of justice or chastisement. Because sometimes when you get a little, too high and mighty, God has to bring you down. And Midianites at this point are the ones who bring him down. So in chapter 6, God calls Gideon. I'm just going to kind of read through this because there's a lot going on in this story. And I'm going to start about verse number 11. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Asbarite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. So right now what we see is Gideon, as God's getting ready to call him, he's beating wheat in a winepress. Why is that important? Normally when you're threshing wheat, you lift it up in the air so you can separate the chaff from the wheat. This got this light shell, almost like the stuff that's on corn. And you would toss it in the air and the wheat would fall and the other stuff would just be carried away. And there's something you would typically do on a hill. But an indication of how bad it's gotten to this point, they're down in a wine press, which is usually dug in a ditch because you want to step on the grapes and drain it down. So essentially they're like hiding, and he's sifting his wheat because he doesn't want the Midianites to see, because at this point they're taking everything that they have. And so he's sitting here, he's hiding, threshing wheat, and the angel of the Lord appears to him and says, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." And Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us?" And we said this last time that they didn't see the connection between their consequences and their sin. And they only saw the bad things happen, but they didn't correlate that with their actions. Did not the Lord bring us, he said, and where were all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord turned and said to him, go in the might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Did I not send you? And he said to him, please, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one. So he's starting at a really great, he's humble, he's lowly, he's also scared, he's also full of doubts and some insecurities, right? And that's us, right? There's times in our lives where am I doing the right thing? Is this the right decision? Am I in the right place in my life? That's us all the time. And I love the fact that God reassures him, hey, you're a mighty man of valor. I know you're in the weakest clan. I know you're the weakest in your family. But if you trust me, I can do great things with you. Because God doesn't see him for where he's at. God is seeing him for what he could do if he trusts him. So that's kind of where we're at in that situation. So, and he's calling Gideon to be a judge, to save Israel. Gideon's unsure of himself. He's doubting. And what does he do? You heard the story. He lays the fleece down. He said, look, I get it. I don't mean to intrude, but can you please show me some proof? He's doubting. And I love it because the fleece shows us is that God, even with our doubts and insecurities, he still graciously appeals to that. Look, I understand you're not where you need to be. You got some doubts, and that's fine. I get it. And he essentially puts the fleece out. Hey, make it wet, the ground dry. Does it? He says, okay, do it one more time. And he even does it again. Just constantly just reassuring them because, again, God is seeing him for what he can do in him and through him rather than the lack of things that he has, rather than the fact that he's not the strongest, rather than the fact that even look at his situation at this point, right? Think about this. Verse 28, he's surrounded by adultery. Because as soon as he gets that call, it says he goes, he smashes up and tears up the idols that's in the house. They have been so steeped in idolatry and they have been so intermingled with the culture around them that they're adapting their practices. And it's the new normal. It's just another Tuesday for them. Idolatry, foreign gods, that's just what we do. And then Gideon goes and smashes those up. And even then, he's still kind of like, he does it by night, right? Because, yeah, what if they see me and they kill me? And so that's kind of the recap of what we got is chapter 6, right? So at the end of this, he's reassured, he's issued a call, and now God's going to send him out to do his will. And then leads us up to chapter 7. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with them rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them by the hill of Morak in the valley. And so you got to keep that in mind. There's a hill, there's a valley. Midian's up on the hill near the valley. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people with you are too many for me to give to the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. Then 22,000 of the people returned, and only 10,000 remained. Now, seeing this right here, this is actually a call to Deuteronomy. I'm going to go back to Deuteronomy chapter 20. This is standard operating procedures. Has anybody here served military? Military? No? Okay. So I imagine in the military, there's a process of weeding out, you know what I mean, those who you want to be there and those who are just taking up space, right? My friend, he calls them soup salads. I don't know what that is. It's just a military term. But yeah, he said basically those that are just there taking up space. And there's this process of weeding out. And so in Deuteronomy, in the law, he has this law concerning warfare. He says, when you go out to war against your enemies, this is Deuteronomy 20, and you see horses and chariots and an army larger than yours, you shall not be afraid of them. Why? For the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up out of the hand of Egypt. And when you draw near to battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people and say, hear, O Israel. So the priest is coming, hear, O Israel. And he's yelling out to everyone, today you are drawing near the battle against your enemies. Do not let your heart be faint. Do not fear or panic or be in dread. Okay, and then he goes down and says, verse 5, then the officer shall speak. Is there any man who has built a new house and has not dedicated? Let him go back. Then he says, lest he die in battle and another man dedicate it. Is there any man who has planted a vineyard and has not enjoyed his fruit? Let him go back. Lest he die in battle and another man enjoy his fruits. Is there any man who has betrothed a wife and has not taken her? Let him go back. And then verse 8, is there any man fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go back to his house. Why? Lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. And so there's this idea, or there's this process you start weeding out, because we're finna go into battle. And the last thing I need is I'm trying to make it home. I'm trying to survive, and you're over there thinking like, man, I sure miss the sandwiches, and man, I wonder what they're doing. I need you right here in this moment because we're trying to get home, right? And so, what is he saying? Doubt is infectious, right? Doubt spreads. You remember the story of the 12 spies? They went out to the land, and 10 of them gave a bad report. Man, them dudes is too big. We need to go back to being in slavery. And everyone was like, oh my goodness, we can't do this. And the two people were like, dude, what's wrong with y'all? Didn't you not realize he just got us through the Red Sea? Man, those guys will be nothing for us. He said, they'll be like bread to us. Man, we'll eat them like lunch. But that negative report spread faster than the positive. They say bad news spreads faster than good news. And so there's this idea is that God's like, look, I don't need the best. I need you to be humble, number one, like Gideon. And number two, I need you to just trust me. You ain't got to have it all together. You just need to have faith and trust me. Because doubt, whether you're in a church and you're trying to rally the church around a cause, whether you're in your family, you're trying to go in a different direction, whether you're in a company, when you have people that doubt and start spreading negative reports and start, man, we can't do this, man, we can't do that, man, these, you ever work with somebody like that? Just every single thing, like, oh my goodness. Like, oh man, these guys this, oh, this guy that, all this company this, all this company that. And you're like, dude, if you don't like it, just leave. You know what I mean? It's just, they're just constantly negativity. And so God wants to weed out that negativity because I'm about to do something great. I don't need, going back to the 12 spies, you melting the heart of your fellow brethren. And so he separates them. But then he says, you know what? There's still too many. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase this section. He said, I'm going to separate even further. And so he says, there's people who lap like a dog, and there's going to be people who kneel down to drink. And I want you to separate them. And what it came down to was 300. But it's interesting because the ones who lap like a dog, the idea is that you're sitting there, you're like, right? Because the Midianites are on a hill and you're in a valley. In other words, I need somebody to be aware of the situation. I need you to be present. I need you to be aware. I need you to be engaged. You know what I mean? I don't need you off somewhere else. I don't need you, for lack of better terms, completely oblivious to what's going on. The people who just kneel down to drink, there's no sense of urgency. This is a war going on. They outnumber us, and we're finna get even further outnumbered. And you're sitting there facing the water, just drinking, not paying attention. Right? You always tell your kids, pay attention. Like, pick your head up. You know what I mean? Like, somebody you tell kids, get your head out the phone and pay attention because life's going on around you, and you're sitting there like this. You know what I mean? I try to tell my kids, like, look, when you get out, you go to the store, put your phone up. We don't always do this as adults, but put your phone up because life going on around you. And something can happen, good or bad, and you miss it. And so God's further separating them, says, look, I need somebody that's going to be present in the moment and have a sense of urgency. So if you're sitting there with your face in the water bent down, I don't need you right now. Maybe later, but not right now. But the guy that's lapping like a dog, this is the guy that's he's aware of the danger and the urgency. That's who I need. And so here we go. We're going to kind of summarize the story. So God proceeds to further remove and separate them, and then they go into battle. We all know about the battle. This great battle happens, and God gives them the victory. Because again, we always said in the book of Judges, it's not about what you can do. It's about what God can do when you render yourself usable. Gideon started out humble. Follow God's will. I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. He's the model of what a child of God is supposed to be. However, here's where the story starts to take a turn. This is where I kind of want to focus on, because we hear about the good part, like, the battle of the 300 and so forth. But when I start reading the next chapter, it's like, man, this is kind of tragic. You went 5-0, and we thought you had a shot at the Super Bowl, and now you're only to be 16-5. So Judges chapter 8. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, what is this that you have done to us? Not cause to fight when you went to fight against Midian. And they accused him fiercely. And he said to them, what have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the harvest of Abiezer? God has given unto your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him was subsided. So I love this, right? Because here we are, they've won the battle, but there's still people fleeing from the battle. So they're running and they're still giving pursuit to basically finish the job, for lack of a better terms. The princes have fled, the kings have left the battlefield, and so they're giving chase. And so these, the men of Ephraim, that's their cousins, for lack of a better term. They're fellow tribe members. They jump into the fight and they capture the princes. But they're mad because like, hey, why didn't you take us, man? We wanted some of that action, right? And it's always funny because, it's always after the hard work is done, someone's like, yeah, man, why do you come get me, man? I could have helped you, And so they're like, yeah, you should have got us, man. We would have really gave them the business. And so I love this because Gideon, the Bible says a soft answer turns away wrath. He didn't say, man, you sorry jokers, y'all didn't want to. He said, hey, man, what we did was nothing. We just fought a little old battle. You guys captured the prize. You captured the princes. They were like, yeah, we did, didn't we? And so he kind of boosts their ego a little bit. He kind of gently smooth things over, because I think that's a good skill set as Christians should have, right? Is the ability to, not that you're lying, it's just that you're giving a gentle answer and you're making peace of the situation. Okay, so then, but they got the princes, but the kings are still on the run. So they're still chasing after kings. And then Gideon came to the Jordan, verse 4, crossed over, he and the 300 men that was with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, so these are some other Israelites in a different land. So these are their other cousins. All right, give us loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they're exhausted. And I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. And the officials of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So they're like, do you have them already? Yeah, I don't know, right? And they should have helped them. They were the Israelites. They were their fellow tribesmen. They should have been united around God's cause, but they weren't. And so at this point, they were kind of like, well, I don't know. And could it be that if you don't capture them, what's he going to do to us afterwards? Or maybe they were trying to play both sides. We don't know. But for whatever reason, they refused to give them food and bread. And Gideon, who just 5 minutes ago, I say 5 minutes ago, but just recently gave a soft answer. Now he's like, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. When I catch them, I'm going to come back around here. I'm going to beat you like you stole something. I'm going to get some thorns and I'm going to whip you good. I mean, that's essentially what he told them. He said, I'm going to flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And then he left and he went to Penuel, another land, and some more Israelites in a different area, as he's still pursuing the kings, right? And he spoke to them in the same manner. So first he told the first guys, hey, I'm going to beat you like you stole something. Then the second guys, he said the same thing. And they was like, yeah, nah, we don't really want any parts of this. And he said, okay, when I come, I'm going to burn down that tower and I'm going to kill you. And so now, man, this doesn't seem like the same Gideon we started with, right? This doesn't seem like the same humble guy, like, man, I'm the weakest person. Now,
got a little confidence now.
Yeah, a lot of confidence, you get that victory under your belt, you start talking different, walking different, you start getting a little full of yourself. So it's the champ, right? He says, when I come to peace, I'm going to break down this tower. So, and we're going to get to the source of his anger. So then Zebah and Zalmunna, verse 10, were in Kakor with their army, about 15,000 men. And Gideon went by the way of the tent dwellers. We'll kind of fast forward. And verse 12, and he basically pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian. And he threw all the army in a panic. So he captures the kings at this point. Then he goes back, as he's coming back, he captures a young man in Succoth, and he asks him, he says, hey, I want you to write down the names of the elders, 77 men. He said, hey, give me a list of names, because I need to know who I need to beat to make an example. Then he came to Succoth. He says, behold, Zebah and Zamullah, whom you taunted me, saying, are the hands of Zebah and Zamullah in your hands that we should give bread to your men? And he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns of the wilderness, and he taught them a lesson. He did what he said. He did what he said he was going to do. He's a man of his word. He did. And then it says he broke down the tower and killed the men of the city. That's a little harsh, Gideon. You know what I mean? Like I said,
Man of his word.
he's a man of his word. Harsh it is. He's a man of his word. All right. So then he asks, this is where we're going to get to the heart of his anger. Then he says to Zebah and Zalmunna, where are the men whom you killed at Tabor? So apparently they killed some people. And they answered, as you are, so were they. Every man of them resembled the son of a king. And he says, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. And as the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not have killed you. So then he says to Jephthah, so he tells his son, hey, kill them. And they were like, essentially, hey, do it yourself. And the kid, he kind of got scared. And so he killed them. But point being is that we see the source of his anger. So he went from being a military general, waging a military campaign for God's purpose of deliverance, to at this point kind of making a personal vendetta. He's waging a personal war, right? I mean, there's one thing to wage war, but the Bible is always clear, even in the times of David, about making personal vendettas when it's time of war. You go to war, you fight. When the fight's over with, it's done. No personal vendettas. He got on Joab, David's nephew, about that. No personal vendettas, no eye for eye. This is war. You fight, you win, lose, it's over. But he's making it personal. And what I want, like I said, what I'm showing you is this, I guess, decline. Yeah, I guess a decline. I know we don't want to say it, but it's kind of a spiritual decline. He started humble, following God's. Now he's going to these fits of rage, and now he's letting his personal vendettas dictate his choices, right? And I think it's one of the things we must always be careful of, is that our personal vendettas get in the way of our choices. I mean, how many churches, how many families have been torn apart over personal vendettas? You don't know what he did to me. You're right, I don't. And we hold that, and that's the driving force behind every single thing that we do. Don't want to do that.
He's starting to think he had the credit instead of God. Instead of saying, look what God's doing, he's kind of saying, look what I done here.
Taking rewards for himself.
Yes.
And being a bit of a coward at the same time by telling his sons, like, hey, you kill this guy. And they're like, I'm not going to kill him. Like, you're the one that has a vendetta against him. You kill him. He was trying to kind of be a scapegoat there. So you can tell his character is really flawed at that point.
Right.
Because he stopped doing what God wanted him to do, and he started doing his own way. So
Right.
he's turned away now and started his own path rather than following the path of, hey, God said do this. Hey, God said do this. He's like, well, I'm gonna make my own way now.
Right. And then they said, no, you a man, kill us yourself. You know what I mean? Because in their culture, it would be kind of disrespect to be killed by a boy. Yeah. If you're going to kill me by a warrior. I want to go out like a warrior, not some scared kid. Get it done and get it done quick. But so this is what I want to point out. We got a few minutes left. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us. Make us a king. We want to make you a king. You and your son and your grandson, we want to make you this lineage, for you saved us from the hand of Midianite. And Gideon said, I will not rule over you. And it's great, right? We want you to be our king. No, I'm not going to be a king. But what does he do in the same breath? Well, let me make a request to you. Go bring the gold earrings from your spoil. He's requesting a tribute. And it's almost like, look, I don't want the responsibility of being a ruler, but I want the perks and benefits, right? A lot of people want to tell people what to do and want to be in charge, but don't want the responsibilities of being in charge. It's one thing to tell people what to do, but it's one thing to take on the responsibilities of being the person that's held responsible, right? And so he says, give me all your gold earrings. They bring all the earrings. and he spread a cloak, and he made a ephod and put it in his city in Oprah, and all of Israel whored after it, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So the ephod, this was in Exodus 28:30. Exodus 28:30. This was a priestly garment that God had created for the high priest. And this was a way of them communicating to God. I don't know how it worked, but he would put on the ephod. Hey, should we go out to war? In some kind of way, God would communicate through the priest, through the ephod. Yes, no, maybe so. Hey, is this a good idea? Yes, no, maybe so. Only for the high priest ordained by God. So what does he do? And all of his infinite wisdom. Mind you, this is the same guy that tore down altars a few chapters back. He makes a golden ephod. Look, it's kind of like the one God created. No one ordained him no one gave him the charge to make the ephod. No one ordained him as a high priest. He took it upon himself to make an ephod. And here we go again. They worshiped it. We just read 2 chapters. You just tore down the altar. And we're right back because, again, starting humble. He said, if you lower yourself, I will exalt you. But when a person exalts himself, I'm going to humble him. And what you'll read in the next chapter when you go home, his whole family lineage wiped out because of his choices. The whole nation of Israel failed, like just a whole bunch of consequences. It tarnished his legacy, ruined the nation, and ruined his family because he couldn't stay humble.
Lance Armstrong did.
Lance Armstrong did. I don't know what that means, but
He won a lot of awards, but then they found out he was cheating. Everything was taken away.
Everything's taken. There you go. Everything's taken away.
Went too far.
And so, so the emphasis I want to bring on is, like I said, starting good, start it low, start it humble. You may start spiritual, you may start in a good place, but make sure that you end well. That could have been a very different story. And mind you, God was still able to use him, and he's still a man of God, and God still used him, as flawed as he was. But those consequences ruined his family. All 70 of his sons died. There was this whole civil war, eternal conflict. And what we'll start seeing is just, and we say it's a cycle, but I think more of a spiral, because every time we go back around, it just goes further down. And by the time you get to chapter 21, it's a hot mess inside of a dumpster. It's just utter chaos. The writer, or narrator of the story summed it up. He says, everyone just did right what was right in their own eyes. You know what I mean? He was trying to explain the story. He's like, look, there was no king, and just, man, everyone just did what they wanted to do. And that explains a lot of the just things that you read. Like, what? Wait, you did what? Why? Because when there's no standard, when you're not hungering and thirsting for righteousness, when you're not following after God, and when, going back to the overall arcing theme of this book, when you lose sight of God, you just go down every which way but the right way. You go down every path but the right path when you lose sight of God.
Well, I think this is a lesson for us older people. You say, oh, well, I did this and I did that all these years, and then you kind of want to coast, and we can't.
No,
We can't.
exactly.
Be just like him.
Like we were talking about last week, you're either going up and getting higher or closer, or you're going that way. There's no riding, no fence. There's no fence.
Right.
Yeah. See, is the bell ring? Yeah. Not yet.
No, doesn't go till.
I think we all know what Peggy said, if you're old enough.
Yeah.
I know exactly what she means.
But yeah, so like I said, Gideon is man, a lot of these characters, when you read, and you look at their choices, and again, I say it's us because on one token, you're good and you'll have a good day, and then by the same breath, one day you're giving a gentle answer and being patient, the next day you snapping on somebody. It happens.
Yeah.
We just have to constantly making sure that we stay humble and hunger and thirsting after God, and constantly coming back, looking at myself in the mirror and constantly working on myself so that I don't start going down that spiral path and just spiral out of control and completely lose contact with God, completely lose touch with God. I mean, you had to have completely lost focus of God to come to this conclusion that, you know what I think would be great? A golden ephod. Right? And I'm going to set it up and you guys can worship it. You had to have lost touch with God that fast. And that happens. You can lose touch and lose reality with God in a heartbeat.
Yes.
And
Well,
you
it also shows that the people, right? Nobody stood up and said, hey, we shouldn't do that. Not one. That's what it says. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
and
In their own eyes. It's just a problem.
yes, and I think this is another lesson for another day or another study for another class period. But this actually kind of segues and sets up the story for the book of Samuel, because you have a generation, there's no central leadership, there's no king, and then you have the story where God brings in the king. But even when God brings in the king, you're like, man, these jokers ain't much better. I mean, the best you had to offer was David, you know, and you really think about David, as good as he was, man was dirty. I mean, he didn't just take somebody's wife. This was the guy that was fighting with you in the trenches side by. It's like, it's equivalent to a guy going off to service together and they fight through Gulf War and they fight through war and this guy has your back. He saves you from a landmine and then you turn around and put a hit on him and then take his wife. No, take his wife first.
And